Hello everyone, DonTheCrown here with a little bit of a build update for the Cold Monk. So you might have seen the update where we're doing the pole circling ring and it's kind of like AoE blowing stuff up. I have another update here that I think is going to make the build feel a little bit smoother, give us a little bit more damage, but it does cut down the defenses a little bit. That's with a little bit of a tree change here. We're going to be focusing on getting some attack speed, and the reason why attack speed feels so good in the build is because it just makes it so that switching between using our frost or ice strike and using handed Chayula to travel around feels very great. And the pole circling ring pretty much makes it so that we're blowing up enemies so much that we don't even need the shattering palm skill anymore, which means that we can actually go and put in a second Tempest spell, which is rather silly here because this pretty much allows us to double down on bells. Now, Bell does require you to have combo points built up, which are built up by hitting enemies with Ice Strike. However, each individual skill apparently that uses combo keeps track of its own like combo points. And so we can build up both bells at the exact same time, and you can drop both of them one after the other. And then when we blast out with our elemental invocation, they will basically both pop together. And to give you kind of an idea of what this looks like, this is on the like hardest version of a Citadel boss that you can get. This is like tier 16 corrupted on a double +1 with both irradiated and corruption. This is like the very tanky Doriani's Triumph, and we can just see the the damage popping off here as the bell goes down. And it does seem that we can like very easily just like freeze the boss. Didn't really get to put up a fight there at all. The boss didn't even get to move, and just like tons of damage here, like millions of damage popping off. And I think it's just overall very, very solid. But I want to show you some actual gameplay, and we can chat a little bit about what's going on here. So basically, we are really only pressing two buttons. Chayula to move into enemies a lot of the time, and then Ice Strike to kill them. And enemies just kind of explode in a huge AoE. And there's not really much going on there. Now, if we meet a tough enemy like Kosis here, we can drop the bell and activate our elemental invocation. I've seen a lot of people asking questions specifically about elemental invocation, and it's a little bit different than some of the other meta skills in that it is something that you have to manually activate. All of the invocation skills require your manual invocation or manual activation of the invocation. It's not just automatically going to pop off once you have enough energy. So you probably see your energy up here in the top at like 100. And if you don't have the skill on your bar, the ball lightnings will never come out. And typically I will just drop this whenever I see like a tough enemy or something that I need to kill. But like really at this point, we're like very far beyond the like damage that we need in order to handle most enemies. And also another thing I like to do with Breach here is I will drop the bell and the invocation and just start running away once I want to go to the other side, because Breach, spawns monsters on both sides of this giant circle. And so unless I can like curve all the way around, it's kind of good to switch sides halfway through. Oh, an AoE shrine. Even better. And so just dropping the bell behind me does give me the opportunity to basically have explosions going off behind me. And yeah, that's pretty much what's going on with the build right now. Now, one thing I'm noticing a lot is a lot of people are struggling with mana. And I think that mana, there's really kind of three things we're going to talk about here. Mana per kill is very, very strong because this pretty much makes it so that when you kill an enemy, you like restore a lot of your mana, especially with pole circling. You're going to be killing a lot of enemies all at once. You can pretty much fill up your entire mana bar in one go. It's pretty important. The second thing is that skill ranks to melee skills is kind of a giant bait. So we can see here that I'm rank 19 on my skill. Let me just pull up the database here for Ice Strike. So we have the DB here. And if we look up Ice Strike, we can see kind of like the damage stuff here and the mana costs. So we have the required level, the stats, and then the cost is mana cost, and you can see the damage. So when you see that going from rank 19 to rank 20, I'm going to go from 42 to 47 mana. But we only go from 193 to 203. So 203 divided by 193 means that we go up a whole 5% damage. But our mana cost goes up by 11%. And this only gets worse kind of as we level. So I've seen some people with like level 29 Ice Strike here. And the mana cost is supremely high here, like almost triple the mana cost, but it's about 60% more damage, which is just probably not worth it. You might need to kind of like adjust it so that you, if you're doing max levels, you might be having mana problems, but generally like levels to melee skills is a bad stat to stack, especially because it's going to get you in so many mana problems. The other thing is when I go and do bosses, especially pinnacle bosses, I just have some gear swap to put on. And specifically, I have gloves that have physical attack damage leeches mana. We can really only leech off of physical damage, which is pretty important to know. And this is just like very, very, very big for our, like, you know, keeping our sustain up. And also on my bell here, I have Soul Thief. On the second one, I have Font of Mana. I don't know if this is really all that helpful. Let's go through all the things we have here. So overabundance, basically the reason I have this is because when you drop the bell down, you cannot build up a second bell while it's on the ground unless you have overabundance on it. And so overabundance basically allows me to, like, once the bell is broken, almost immediately drop another bell down if I, like, you know, have the, you know, desire to do so. And it's just like very solid for that. Font of Rage makes it so it kind of makes it easy for me to generate rage against the boss. Rage is basically a more multiplier, get up to 30 stacks of it, so we can get like 30% more damage here pretty easily. It's pretty nice. You could do like Rage Forge potentially on one of these bells to make it consume some rage if you really wanted to. I think that might be like some of the good stuff later on. Heavy Swing here I think is actually pretty good. This gives us more physical damage here on the bell, and the bell doesn't actually convert, it's just bonus damage depending on shockwaves deal extra damage of the corresponding type for the elemental ailments, so increasing the base physical damage of the bell is actually quite good. And the negative for Heavy Swing doesn't affect us because the less attack speed for the bell doesn't mean anything because it triggers off whenever it gets hit, and so the less attack speed does nothing. Likewise, Heft here also gives us more maximum physical damage. I think this is also really good. Gives a little bit of a cost multiplier. And then Soul Thief makes it so that the bell helps fill up our mana bar. Now, I'm still not 100% sold on all of these supports. Probably will be adjusting these as we go. And the second bell is going to have Font of Mana, Leverage, which is pretty good. More critical strike chance against frozen enemies. Culling Strike. I think having Culling Strike somewhere in your build makes sense. And just having this on, like, where you can basically cull an elite enemy or a rare or unique enemy. So Culling Strikes kill normal enemies when their life is at 30% or low. Magic enemies are killed at 20%. And then rares at 10. The uniques at 5%. So that's not like super duper important, but I do think that this does help. And I believe the math on this is probably going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of a 5% damage increase, just generally across the board. For uniques, I'm kind of surprised it's down to 5%. That's very, very low. Then the last thing here is Discombobulate. It's something I'm testing out, but supported attacks cause daze buildup equal to 100% of the physical damage dealt, and daze makes it so that it's easier to stun enemies. But I'm not really 100% sold on this either. There's probably some other stuff we're going to mess with. If you're looking at the Mobilix builder, they don't allow me to actually use the same active skill more than once right now. So we're not going to be able to have that on the builder probably until January once they get back from the holiday break. And yeah, so we dropped Shattering Palm for that. As you can see here, we started like 6 links some of our skills. So we have like Elemental Evocation all the way out with Inspiration finally. This is helping out with the mana cost a little bit there. And for the most part, just pretty much the same stuff from the, the guide before. Our Herald of Ice, we have Magnified Effect, Long Shot, Cold Penetration, and Ambush. all of this is very solid. I tried to put the one headhunt that gives you like the mods from a rare when you kill it, but it needs to be in a melee skill, which Herald Device is not a melee skill, which is a little bit sad. With the gear stuff here, just show off my gear here real quick. There's a couple things I want to talk about with weapon that I kind of learned and picked up over the last few days. So I still think that the ideal, perfect, best in slot weapon is probably going to be a triple physical weapon. However, increased elemental damage with attacks does give you quite a bit of damage, mostly because we have like 400-ish increased damage on the tree right now, and getting another 100% is really, really big. Now, another thing that I did not know worked is that on weapons, if you have critical strike damage, it's actually kind of bugged right now. Maybe bugged, maybe working as intended. But if we go here to Ice Strike, we can see my critical strike damage bonus is 405. But if I put on this 30% critical strike damage bonus, you'll see here that that actually goes up by 126. So this seems like this is acting as a multiplier in some way, which is pretty crazy. But, you know, this might be a bug. But I think that pretty much what you can do is take whatever the critical strike damage bonus is on the weapon, divide it by like whatever your crit is here. So I have 50% chance to crit. So this is like probably a 15% multiplier when you're kind of making calculations. So you could probably find a weapon that is maybe lower PDPS, but has critical strike damage bonus or increased elemental damage with attacks and get a better deal for your thing. So pretty much when I bought this weapon, there was a whole bunch of weapons that were around like the 750, 770, I think this was originally before I fucked up and divined it poorly. But none of them had this elemental damage with attacks. And so we can see here, for example, that right now we're seeing like 20-ish divines or something like that. But if I throw in the elemental damage with attacks, there's only one, and it's 114, which is very stinking high. So definitely I think that this is probably a little bit undervalued potentially, and so something to keep your eye on. And that critical strike damage, definitely undervalued as well. I think that could be really darn ridiculous. I'm finally able to actually use my fancy ring here, along with the pole circling. I did buy these boots earlier today. They give me a little bit more movement speed, give me life, give me a little bit more resistances. I think the reduced freeze duration does feel pretty good, even with the thawing charm. And then we just have a pair of like junker gloves that we use for killing stuff. This finishes out my resistances. And then I will put these gloves on when I go to fight bosses. Realistically, I would really love to be able to have a pair of gloves that has attack speed on it. I think that would help out quite a bit. But right now my resistances just kind of aren't there just yet. I'm not really sure how to fix that per se. I thought about potentially going and whittling my chest armor down, especially because I have so much cold resist on my gear right now. And so I think it would knock the cold res off and hopefully give me like some other sort of res. But realistically, like having the stun threshold and this cold res is probably not doing me very many favors. And I think that's pretty much it for the update, besides the passive tree. We can talk maybe a little bit about this real quick, but basically just try to pick up more attack speed and more jewels. So picking up jewel here, picking up a jewel here, and you could potentially put a time loss jewel here that gives you like crit or attack speed and stuff. And I think like a large one in this spot is going to hit like all the way out to here. If you don't know what a time loss jewel is, I think I have one in my inventory here. So a time loss jewel is basically a jewel that has a radius to it. And so it makes it so that nodes that are in its range, so we can see all small passives are getting shock duration, elemental damage, increased damage to hits and uniques, and then notables also get stuff. So in the range here on just a normal one, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 small passives, and then 2 notables, or 3 notables even. And so I think that this is a pretty strong option here to pick up. You can probably get some really, really OP ones. Unfortunately, you cannot search any of these modifiers yet on trade. And if you can get one that goes out to large radius, it would hit these nodes as well. It would even hit some of these over here, which might make switching from this section to this section be something that you might want to consider. Just, to keep that in mind. And I do think that there's like a lot of value in this area of the tree. I don't really think that the recoup his life is all that great though, mostly because when we get hit, we kind of want to be back to full life ASAP. We don't really want to wait for recoup to restore our health over 8 seconds. So I don't think this is really all that great. But really, most of the jewels that I have in here are pretty similar. We have like evasion rating, critical hit chance, attack speed, elemental damage. Over here, we have evasion, critical hit chance, attack speed, elemental damage. Sounds familiar, right? Then we have evasion, attack speed, increased damage, and flask effect. And then down here, we have evasion, critical hit chance, attack speed, attack damage. And then over here, we have +1 rage, melee damage, elemental damage, and knockback distance, and some extra strength. And so that, I think, is pretty decent. We do get quite a bit of attack speed from this node here. So basically get 1% attack speed per 15 dexterity. That's basically a little bit more than probably like 13 attack speed, which is pretty nice. Just picking up all these attack speed that especially have stats on them is pretty cool. And pretty much at this point, I have way more dexterity than I need. So I've started to basically pick up strength nodes instead of dexterity, which is definitely very nice to finally have. And the bottom of that's because I have like intelligence here. I have dexterity and intelligence here as well. And yeah, I mean, maybe to fix the resistances, I might need to swap this hat out with something that is a triple res. But I think replacing a 1340 evasion hat is going to be quite difficult. So we'll see. I also picked up this stuff down here, mostly for more attack speed. There's a little bit of melee damage on this as well. This is like a little bit more of an efficient way to get to this big node. The melee strike range really isn't all that noticeable, unfortunately. I don't think that this is really all that important, and I don't think that this actually does anything for Herald of Ice. I could be wrong, but Herald of Ice does not have a melee tag, so it shouldn't have a strike range as well. That's pretty much it. It's been kind of a fun time blasting on this. Like you saw, we've been blowing up bosses. We've gone through, we've done the Arbiter. We've done all of the ranks of the Breach boss. I'm not really sure what we're going to do about Simulacrum. I think Simulacrum is a little bit busted at the moment. Just not very fun to play. We have to put Shattering Palm back on just to clear it, though. We'll have to see what's going on. Hope this video helped you out, though. We'll see you again soon, and come by the stream.